So hello everyone. It's been a while since I've posted anything here on YouTube. It's nice to finally be back. So a lot's happened since my last video. Of course, we now have PDX Mods. And this is my first build since that was released. And my first build using MoveIt in Cities Skylines 2. And how happy I am to finally see this mod return. So a huge thanks to Cuboid for all of his work. And without MoveIt, today's build would not have been possible. So I hope this shows you some of the possibilities now available to us using this mod. We also have all of the beach properties assets now, which as from a few days ago have been refunded and are now free for all players, which is a really great thing to see. So I really want to try and get as many of them as possible into today's build. Now what excites me most about beach properties isn't the buildings or even the palm trees, but it's that this asset pack came with around 370 props, all of which are pretty useful and we'll be using in today's build. So before we get started, if you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and comment. This would also be a great time to subscribe as we have some very exciting videos coming up. So let's get into it. In today's episode, we're going to be creating a completely custom elevated train station. If you haven't seen it already, Infrastructurist did a really great video on custom train stations just a few weeks ago, and I've been really keen to attempt one myself for quite a while. Also, a big shout out to Treyjack and my friend Obe, who both also did really great guides on custom stations on the Cities Skylines modding server, which I will link down below. So let's start with the initial setup of the custom train station. So I'm going to be using the subway actually for this build. You can choose either the train or the subway, they kind of work the same. And this is possible using just dev mode, but I am actually using the extra networks and areas mod by Konzi, which integrate these assets into the game's transportation UI, so please go and download that. The first asset we need is the double subway station track, and I'm going to raise it up to 10 meters as this will be an elevated station. Just make sure the track is long enough. It does need to be 250 meters or 25 units or longer to work correctly. So the next asset we need are the integrated subway stops. We have two options, a middle platform, which looks so cool, see how it changes the network's appearance, and a side platform. This doesn't really change the aesthetics, but citizens will be able to board from the edge of the track. So I'll plop one down on either side of the track. So I'll just connect this up with the main train network using the non-station track and create a route on the line just as you normally would. Next, we just need to make this station accessible to citizens, and we'll do this by using the invisible pedestrian paths. So just for a quick test, I'm going to place these just in a straight line. There we go, you can now see citizens travelling up our invisible path to the platform. Unfortunately, they are walking on the same height as the track. Ideally, we would have wanted them raised up on a platform. Okay, so now we know the concept works, we can start to build out the station. Now I'm not going to treat this as a tutorial on MoveIt. If you're not familiar with the mods, there are a few tutorials on YouTube already, but we'll mostly be moving, rotating and raising assets into position. The first asset we'll need for the station are horizontal pillars, which is such a versatile asset and will be used for the main building's foundations and platform. The station track does have these fences on either side, so we do need to make sure we're just going over the top of them. If we put it at a specific height, it almost looks like a small white line on the platform. So I've gone 3 pillars wide for the platform. So if I delete some of these in the middle, then we now have a nice little gap for the staircases. So I'm just going to show you this quickly, but this was a bit of a first failed attempt at some stairs. But it just didn't really have a good aesthetic. It was like too time consuming. And after a few hours, they all accidentally dropped to the floor anyway. So I did later work out a much better and quicker alternative. So the second asset I'll be using heavily in this build are called storefronts. Now I've been using these quite a lot across a number of builds recently, and I absolutely love them and the customization they allow. Next, I'm just raising them up and into position on the middle floor using MoveIt. And then using more horizontal pillars for the floor. There is a bit of trial and error initially until I find the combinations I want. I kind of want the main entrances to be directly below the staircases. So if I start with the entrances and then all the other storefronts I can figure out from there. So next up, I'm going to have a second attempt now at some stairs. And this is the one I end up using in the build. So you can see me adding a bunch of white lines to the ground just as a guide. I'm using these to help me work out equal distances for each step. You can see me here struggling to select the one I want to remove it. And that's because they're all overlapping so much, it just makes it impossible to select them. So on my second attempt, I place the next one ever so slightly in front of the previous. So it should make it easy now to select. And I will just have to straighten them up manually. So once I've got the hang of this technique, honestly it didn't really take me that long, maybe 10 minutes for each staircase. So it wasn't really overly time consuming at all. And then I can move them up into position connecting the middle floor with the top platform area. So using the tip to delete objects inside of buildings, which I showed in my previous zoo video, if you haven't watched that, please go check it out. I'm also going to delete all of these brand graphics from the storefronts. Cool, so a lot of the main structure is in now, and we can start to make it a bit more functional and detail it all up. And I'll start with adding in surfaces around the station. Unfortunately, we are back to vanilla ones for the moment. But don't worry, custom surfaces will be returning in just a few short weeks, so there's not long to wait at all. So next up, let's get citizens to start using the station. So now we need to run invisible paths all over this thing from the street inside the building, up the stairs to the central point of the platform. And I want multiple entrances so citizens will use the entire thing too. So I can get citizens walking at the correct height of the platform. but unfortunately they do want to drop down to the height of the track eventually to queue for the train. This is unavoidable, I think, for now. For the most part, people are walking at the platform height to get there, so I'm quite satisfied with the end result. But yeah, how cool is this all looking? So great seeing people move across all the different heights of the structure. Let's get all the connections built out now. The original height I had for the middle floor just didn't quite align with the pedestrian height, so I just had to adjust the height just a little to get them perfectly matched up. And I'm adding in a few more steps now just to cover the missing gaps in the height difference. So next up, I'm going to start using some of the new beach properties assets. We of course have all the new palm trees, which we all know about, but I've been very excited to use these. But there are actually an absolute ton of props, which come with the pack too. We have an absolute ton of new fences, railings and walls, which will come in very handy for this build, and there's just so many good options to choose from. These will provide safety to the upper 2 floors of the station, so we'll just use the prop line tool and have them going the length of the station, and then just use MoveIt to raise them up and into position. So another new set of assets which came with the Beach Properties Assets Pack are chimneys, but in this case I think we can use them as vertical pillars just to provide a bit more support to the upper floor. So at this point in the build, a new mod, Find It, was released. We'll of course be using this moving forward. TDW has really done a superb job on the mod, so shout out to him. But there's one thing which has bothered me for a long time now. It was the same with Find Stuff, that there's just no thumbnails. It sounds silly, but this really annoys me, like I need these so much. So I ended up reaching out to the modder TDW to see if he wanted to collaborate and maybe sort this out. So for the past few weeks we have been working together with a team of volunteers, and hopefully next weekend we'll have a new mod to share with you. So back to the build. So we're now adding in a taxi depot next to the station to help transport our citizens around the local area. There's also a whole bunch of taxi signs which are now usable thanks to MoveIt. This is another tip which I showcased in my previous zoo episode, but I'm now using the taxi depot's upgrade a garage and repeating that multiple times around the area. Now I'm sure a lot of you will have seen my custom car parking video just a few months ago. Well, something I didn't realise at the time was you can actually do this with underground car parking too. So it works in a similar way with the perpendicular networks for the parking. But first you just need to use a normal road for the tunnel and then connect the parking once you're underground. Again, it's a really useful tip for parking in your cities. And look at that, straight away we have some cars showing up, which is pretty damn cool. So we also connect the underground parking with an invisible network directly to the station, as if there was a connected tunnel to walk through. So next up in the beach properties prop assets are pergolas. Now again, there's an absolute ton of these available, and they're just such a useful prop, and they come in so many different variations and sizes. So we thought these would be good to have on the upper level, help give a little bit of shade to our citizens. But I'd also like to have something like a coffee shop or an indoor level on the top floor, maybe somewhere for elevator access for accessibility. So I decided to use the storefront assets again and create my own building. So it's quite simple, just 4 walls and a roof. But for the roofs, I'm using a prop called a carport, which seems to work pretty well. I also put a few roof props on them for a bit more realism. And again, remove all of the billboards and signs. So once done, I can then just move them into position and see how it fits. So I'm going to need a few of these in total, 2 on either end and 2 in the middle. So I just have to repeat this process a few more times to get all the buildings I need, and then I can get them all into position on the platform. Cool, so let's go into one final detailing time lapse now to close out the build, and I'll return soon for a final live play and we'll close out today's episode. Okay, so welcome back, and wow, that was a pretty crazy build. Funny thing is, this was meant to be like a quick video before the next big video, which is coming up soon. But I think I got a little carried away. You know, the whole build took me about 3 or 4 days in total. So I guess not too bad, but quite a lot of time spent on such a small space. But it was a completely different challenge this time. In a way, it kind of felt almost like procedural objects at times, you know, with the pillars and the storefronts. But how good did all of the stairs come out, and, you know, doing something a bit more custom. You can see here, unfortunately, we do have heads poking through the platform when they queue in for the train. But if we had a bit more finer control over the heights, I think I would have raised the platform ever so slightly just to hide them. But for the most part, citizens are walking fine over most of the platform, so the effect is definitely there. So it's surprising how well people are actually walking up these stairs. You know, they are such a great addition to the game now thanks to MoveIt. So I encourage you to give them a go, try working with different elevations. You can also see both my trains are yellow, so please consider making your train lines and subway lines the same colour. You know, having one pink and one green and one purple train just isn't normal. We also have some restaurants and some outside seating areas around the station, just add a bit more vibrancy and detail to the area. And the taxi depot off to the side. Although I'm not quite sure where all my taxis have gone, I swear there was a lot of taxis and people here earlier. But these garages off to the side, I also really like. For me, these are like a storage facility or something like that. We also, of course, have the underground car parking, which is another cool little trick. It works really well. You can see how many cars are actually down here now. Very cool thing to add to your cities. And all of these custom buildings I created from scratch on top of the platform. It's a really fun thing to do. In my next episode, I'm going to do a lot more of this. You really can create whatever you want. So talking about my next episode, and I've mentioned this a few times now, but the US build, the biggest episode of the series, I can promise you it is up next in the series. But this will likely be a 2-part episode. I can't wait to show you that. There's going to be a lot of exciting new things to see. But before that, there may be 1 or 2 smaller modding videos coming out soon, such as this collaboration with TDW and Find It for the thumbnails. I hope this initiative will help improve your experience playing CS2 moving forward. So yeah, busy time now for the channel and a lot more content incoming over the next couple of weeks. So please subscribe to the channel if you're not already. There's never been a better time to do so. I would really appreciate if you considered liking and commenting for engagement. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you all again in the next video.